Opening hook, 100 words. They say the quietest storms rage in a veteran's soul, unseen battles waged long after the bullets have stopped flying. Today, in a hushed courtroom packed with curious onlookers, a single figure stands shackled in truth and rumor. Marcus D. Johnson, a black homeless veteran who once swore to defend the very Constitution, now putting him on trial. Whispers circulate about what he's done. Why a man draped in patriotic sacrifice faces the cold scrutiny of a judge's bench. Yet as the judge scans the paperwork and finally speaks his name, a ripple of astonishment courses through the chamber. Suddenly, every person rises to their feet. Black homeless veteran on trial. When the judge hears his name, the entire courtroom rises. Chapter 1. A glimpse of battle scars. War leaves marks not always visible to the naked eye. It stirs a conflagration inside a soldier's mind that can smolder for years. Even long after returning home, many veterans fight phantom battles in everyday life, testing their resilience at every turn. For Marcus D. Johnson, these lingering ghosts had become constant companions. He had once been a proud Marine, enlisting at 18 straight out of his neighborhood in South Philadelphia. The recruiters had come to his high school promising opportunity education and the dignity of service. With that characteristic grin and a heart that pulsed with patriotism, Marcus had signed on the dotted line. Soon he was at Paris Island, training under the punishing sun, forging iron out of raw determination. Marcus's dedication only magnified as he served through Operation Iraqi Freedom. Surrounded by the dusty streets of Baghdad, he witnessed moments of heroism and horror in equal measure. He'd lost close friends in harrowing attacks, held wounded comrades in his arms, and prayed under a sky that rained mortars at night. Each heartbreak shaped him, forging not just a soldier but a man who believed deeply in what the uniform stood for: courage, camaraderie, and selfless devotion. After an honorable discharge, Marcus returned home, physically intact, yet psychologically battered. Like thousands of others, he battled PTSD in silence. The brief medical evaluations at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center offered him medication and sporadic therapy sessions, but it wasn't enough. Nightmares of bombed-out vehicles and the acrid stench of burning steel plagued him. Before long, he found it difficult to keep steady employment. The nightmares led to insomnia. Insomnia led to tardiness, and tardiness led to lost jobs. The once buoyant Marine saw each new day as an unwinnable fight. Prideful and stubborn, he refused to move in with distant relatives, insisting on making it on his own. One late rent notice led to another, until finally Marcus found himself without a permanent roof over his head. He wandered the streets of Philadelphia, drifting from one shelter to another. By day, he'd read dog-eared copies of history books in public libraries. History fascinated him, especially the stories of African-American veterans who had served in previous wars, returning home to find discrimination instead of respect. Some nights he slept in an old battered car that a friend from the VA had loaned him, rattling in the wind like the ghosts of old firefights. Despite these hardships, he never completely lost hope. He still carried that Marine motto in his heart: Semper Fi, always faithful. Faithful to his country, faithful to a better tomorrow, even if that tomorrow seemed impossibly distant. Chapter 2. The Unraveling. A turning point came on a rain-soaked November evening under the flickering street lamps near City Hall. Marcus had been loitering outside a convenience store, shivering in a threadbare coat. He was exhausted and hungry. Hungry, no starving. He'd missed a spot at the local shelter because he didn't arrive in time to secure a bed. An empty stomach gnawed at him, intensifying the memories of rations overseas. He stood there watching people dart in and out with umbrellas and plastic bags. The store manager inside eyed him warily from behind the counter. Another black face in tattered clothing, another homeless man who might cause trouble. Marcus caught the stare, recognized that look from 1,000 passers-by. He decided to move on before he was forcibly removed. Just as he started walking, a distraught woman in a business suit burst out of the store, yanking her arm free from a man who was shouting at her. She slipped on the wet pavement, dropping her purse. Out spilled a wallet, lipstick, scattered receipts, and a small cloth bag. The man advanced on her, his voice harsh and threatening. "You owe me for that contract." He reached for her with violent intent. Marcus acted on instinct. Like he had done in Iraq, he stepped into harm's way to protect the innocent. He rushed forward, ignoring the store manager yelling behind him. He placed himself between the woman and the enraged man, using a calm yet firm voice. "Back off!" Marcus demanded, his posture tense. A fight broke out. The man swung wildly, but Marcus, with the reflexes of a trained Marine, deflected the blows. In the scuffle, the stranger's head smacked a metallic newspaper dispenser, leaving him bleeding and unconscious. The woman, trembling, snatched her purse from the ground, her eyes wide with fear, stammering a hasty thank you before dashing off. Police sirens wailed in the distance. Witnesses poured out from the store, confronted by the sight of a battered, bleeding man and a homeless veteran looming over him. With the woman long gone, it looked like Marcus had mugged or assaulted the victim. The store manager called the cops, convinced that Marcus was the aggressor. Officers arrived, guns partially drawn, adrenaline high. Marcus tried explaining. He tried to articulate how the altercation began. The manager insisted he saw Marcus harassing a customer. The battered man, regaining consciousness, pointed a shaky finger at Marcus and croaked, "He attacked me." The officers didn't want a messy debate in the street. They cuffed Marcus, pressed him into the wet sidewalk, ignoring his pleas of innocence. Under the swirl of red and blue lights, the store manager's statement sealed the arrest. Marcus was loaded into a patrol car, fear and rage boiling within him. In that singular moment, everything unraveled. What began as a heroic intervention turned into a nightmare. The system Marcus had fought to protect had just snapped steel bracelets around his wrists, labeling him the criminal. He stared at the rain-streaked windows of the police cruiser, not knowing that the fight for his future had only just begun. Chapter 3. A Lawyer's Doubts. A few days later, Marcus sat in a holding cell, the stale air thick with the aroma of despair. Inmates murmured about Deal's sentencing or ways to smuggle cigarettes. Marcus tried to distance himself mentally, recalling the open desert skies from his deployment, anything but these cramped walls. He finally got assigned a public defender, a young attorney fresh out of law school named Rachel McBride. With large glasses perched on her nose and an almost trembling sincerity in her eyes, she introduced herself through the bars. "I'm here to help you," she said, forcing a reassuring smile. "We'll figure this out." He was uncertain but polite, offering a small nod. "I appreciate that." She opened a manila folder, scanning the details. "Marcus Johnson accused of second-degree assault. You served in the Marines, correct?" He nodded. "Yes, ma'am. 8 years." She scribbled notes. "You have any prior arrests, any convictions?" Marcus shook his head. "No convictions. I got into a scuffle once or twice overseas, but nothing stateside." I've never been in trouble with the law. Rachel frowned. Witness statements claim you attacked this man unprovoked, but you're saying it was self-defense that you stepped in to protect a woman. That's exactly what happened. He emphasized frustration, etching lines across his brow. She ran off. She's my only hope at proving I didn't start the fight. Rachel closed the folder. We need that woman's testimony. If we can find her and get her to appear in court, your story stands a solid chance. Marcus let out a weary breath. She dropped her purse. I saw her name on a business card. Alicia. Something. She had a real fancy office address. I only glanced at it for a second. That might be enough, said Rachel, tapping her pen. I'll do some digging. But the prosecution is already prepping to spin you as an unstable homeless vet with a chip on your shoulder. We have to be careful. His gaze hardened. I don't want pity. I want justice. Rachel nodded firmly. We'll fight for it. Outside the cell, she wrestled with her own insecurities. Fresh out of school, she had no illusions about the steep uphill climb in a system that often prejudged homeless black men. Yet something about Marcus's quiet dignity struck her. She promised herself she would fight for him, no matter how daunting the challenge. Chapter 4. The investigation begins. Rachel McBride wasn't a detective by any means, but she had enough grit to track down leads. She scoured the city's corporate directories, searching for an Alicia, matching the description given by Marcus. The city of Philadelphia was sprawling, full of office towers, law firms, marketing agencies, finance companies, countless places where a professional woman named Alicia might work. Frustration mounted when calls led to dead ends. No one recalled a scuffle at that convenience store. The store manager insisted that the victim, a local entrepreneur named David Rothstein, was the real victim of a violent homeless attacker. As days passed, the district attorney's office built a narrative of a vagrant with an anger problem unhinged from PTSD. Exhausted, Rachel visited the battered man's address listed in the police report. She found an upscale condominium near Rittenhouse Square. Polished lobby floors reflected her anxious expression as she approached the front desk, which was attended by a sharply dressed concierge. She asked about David Rothstein's condition and whether there was any mention of a woman named Alicia. The concierge shrugged politely, but dismissively. No one by that name was on record, and he couldn't share any information about Mr. Rothstein beyond verifying that he lived there. Meanwhile, the city buzzed with tension. Footage from a bystander's cell phone showing a portion of the scuffle, including Marcus restraining the man, circulated on local social media. Media chatter about homeless crime soared. One snippet of footage, when viewed without context, indeed looked incriminating. It showed Marcus throwing the man against the metal newspaper dispenser. The context that the man had been menacing a woman was conveniently missing. The seeds of public opinion sprouted, and they weren't in Marcus's favor. At the same time, Rachel pursued another angle: the woman's purse. Maybe she dropped something else at the scene. She visited the store manager again, politely asking if anything had been turned in. With an irritated grunt, he tossed an unclaimed earring and a crumpled grocery receipt onto the counter. No ID, no business card. The manager told her that if she wasn't buying anything, she needed to leave. Dejected, she stepped outside into the crisp December air. Snow flurries drifted against the Philly skyline. With no new leads, she felt her confidence waver. In law school, she had believed passionately in the purity of justice. Now confronted by the day-to-day reality of rushed investigations and a fragile client pinned by damning evidence, her illusions cracked. She realized that without a witness, their case stood on the edge of a precipice. Chapter 5. Backed into a corner. Marcus's first court appearance was a bail hearing. The judge, a stern older man named Judge Rutherford, glanced between the prosecution and the public defender. The prosecution argued that Marcus was a flight risk, that he had no stable residence or job. They brought up his mental instability as a veteran with PTSD, painting a lurid picture of an unpredictable threat to the community. Rachel did her best to refute these claims, highlighting Marcus's honorable service and the lack of any violent criminal history. However, the judge set the bail at an amount Marcus couldn't afford. With a look of regret, Rutherford hammered the gavel Marcus would remain in custody until the trial. Days blurred together in the county jail. Marcus struggled to maintain hope. He prayed he wrote in a battered notebook about his memories of Iraq, about the mistakes he'd made since returning home. He tried to keep his mind sharp, but the fluorescent lights and echoing hallways felt suffocating. Meal trays slid through the bars, bland lumps of food that only increased his sense of alienation. He thought back to the unconditional camaraderie of his Marine days, longing for that sense of belonging. Meanwhile, Rachel pored over every shred of evidence. She filed motions to access the city's traffic camera footage near the store, hoping they might capture the scuffle from a different angle. If they could find a frame of the woman being harassed, it might corroborate Marcus's story. The motion was granted, but the footage they found was murky. The critical moments were obstructed by a passing bus, leaving only partial glimpses of the altercation. 2 weeks before the trial, Rachel had a breakthrough. Buried in the police records was a mention of a 911 call made minutes after the confrontation. The caller had been frantic, describing a woman in a business suit running down the street crying, "He tried to hurt me." The transcript revealed the 911 operator's repeated attempts to get more information, but the caller had hung up. The phone number was unlisted, but it was a clue, a confirmation that someone else had been in distress that night. Ecstatic Rachel told Marcus about this new lead. A glimmer of hope returned to his eyes. They had something tangible that pointed toward the truth. But the identity of that woman remained elusive. The clock was ticking, and the trial date loomed. Chapter 6. Trials of Memory. In the quiet hours, Marcus's mind drifted back to his time overseas, the sense of duty that led him to stand up for that distressed woman. Was the same sense of duty that once compelled him to risk his life for strangers in a war-torn city. He remembered cradling a wounded Iraqi child in his arms, waiting desperately for a medevac helicopter. Soldiers are trained to respond, not to hesitate. Sometimes that meant paying a price. In jail, he struck up conversations with other veterans, locked in similar cycles of despair. A Marine named Lenny recounted how he'd landed in prison after a bar fight. A former Army medic named Carson admitted he ended up sleeping on the streets, turning to petty theft just to eat. Their stories were eerily similar. Post-discharge difficulties, limited mental health support, and an unyielding avalanche of life's challenges that overcame them. This solidarity gave Marcus strength. Even behind bars, the brotherhood of service endured. They swapped stories of boot camp drills and the comedic mishaps that occurred in the field. They respected each other's stripes, reminded each other that not everyone behind bars was irredeemable. Marcus prayed daily, hoping that somewhere the woman he rescued was searching for him just as desperately as Rachel was searching for her. Chapter 7. A Hidden Web of Deceit. While combing through city records, Rachel stumbled upon an interesting thread. The man Marcus had subdued, David Rothstein, wasn't just any local entrepreneur. He had a string of prior lawsuits filed against him, sexual harassment allegations, fraud cases, and even a complaint by a former employee claiming intimidation. These cases had mostly been settled out of court. That indicated David was no stranger to legal tangles and might have resources to manipulate outcomes. Rachel's visits to David's address were fruitless. He wouldn't answer her calls or messages. Through the prosecutor's office, she learned that he was in physical therapy for his injuries and wasn't granting interviews. The narrative from the prosecution was that David was an innocent man, violently attacked by a mentally unstable homeless vet. Digging deeper, Rachel discovered that David was affiliated with a business called Rothstein and Perry Consultants. She recognized the name Perry from a prior search and realized that Alicia Perry was a partner in the firm, potentially the woman from that night. But Alicia Perry's official address was listed in New York City, not Philadelphia. It took several more days of phone calls, but Rachel finally located Alicia Perry's personal assistant. The assistant refused to comment on the specifics, but confirmed that Alicia was indeed in Philadelphia for a client meeting around the date of the incident. However, the assistant insisted that Alicia had left for an extended trip to London immediately after. She claimed no knowledge of any assault or confrontation in Philadelphia. Rachel's instincts screamed that Alicia might be the missing piece. If Alicia was that woman, it explained the business attire, the argument about a contract, and the fear in her voice. But she was out of the country, and the trial date was in a week. Time was running out. Chapter 8. Pre-trial tensions. The pre-trial hearings brought forth the prosecution's confidence. They paraded the injured David Rothstein as a victim, brandishing photos of his bruised face, the stitched wound on his forehead. In a hearing behind closed doors, David testified that he was leaving the convenience store when Marcus accosted him for money, then attacked him out of rage when refused. The store manager echoed this narrative, stating he'd seen Marcus loitering outside the store for weeks, scaring customers. Rachel was incensed. She pressed David on the harassing phone calls he'd allegedly made to Alicia, but the prosecutor objected vehemently. With no proof Alicia was even present, the judge sustained the objection. David played the role of the reluctant victim, well painting a tragic picture. Marcus's fate teetered precariously, as public defenders rarely had deep investigative resources. The entire system was stacked against him. Despite the gloom, Marcus appeared calm at the defense table. The same discipline that got him through boot camp held him steady. He'd clasp his hands, close his eyes, and breathe deeply, ignoring David's theatrical performance. Yet behind that stoic exterior, the anxiety gnawed at his gut. Outside the courthouse, local news stations hovered with cameras capturing the homeless veteran assault case. They interviewed passers-by, who offered quick judgments about rampant homeless violence. In a soundbite world, the facts were overshadowed by sensational headlines. One night, after a long day, preparing motions, Rachel received an anonymous envelope slipped under her apartment door. Inside was a single piece of paper with a typed sentence, "Ask him about the other victim." No signature, no return address. Her stomach twisted. Someone out there knew something that could help. Chapter 9. A Whisper of Truth. The cryptic message spurred Rachel to rummage through old newspaper archives. She discovered that David Rothstein had been a suspect in a domestic violence case years ago. The alleged victim, a fiancé who abruptly withdrew the complaint. Another out-of-court settlement. Another hush-hush resolution. Realizing she might be onto something, Rachel arranged to meet the fiancé, a woman named Linda Harrison. After persistent coaxing, Linda reluctantly agreed to an off-record conversation in a coffee shop near the Schuylkill River. Linda appeared, worn eyes darting around. "I have a restraining order against him, but it's not enforced anymore." It was a nightmare. "Why did you withdraw your complaint?" Rachel asked gently. Linda hesitated, tears glistening. "He threatened my family, my job. He's well connected. He has a cousin in the district attorney's office. David's father used to be a judge. I couldn't fight him. I was terrified." Rachel's pulse pounded. "And Alicia Perry? Are they business partners?" Linda nodded. "Yes, and I heard rumors that she was trying to get out of the partnership because of his aggressiveness. She threatened to go public with allegations if he didn't buy her out. It's possible they argued. He can be violent." This revelation made sense of everything. Alicia was likely the woman at the convenience store. She had threatened to leave David's company. That would explain the confrontation. Perhaps David demanded she pay some penalty or sign something before leaving. Marcus intervened inadvertently, plunging himself into this labyrinth of David's intimidation. Chapter 10. The veteran community unites word about Marcus's predicament, spread among local veteran advocacy groups. A retired Army Colonel, Michael Gaines, who ran a non-profit called Vets for Change, caught wind of Marcus's story. He believed it was a travesty that a Marine who served his country could be so thoroughly abandoned by the system. Colonel Gaines organized a small protest outside the courthouse the week before trial. Dozens of veterans from Vietnam era to present day held signs reading "Justice for our brother" and "PTSD is not a crime." They chanted slogans demanding fair treatment. The local media picked up on this demonstration, offering a counter-narrative to the tabloids, labeling Marcus as a deranged vagrant. The demonstration emboldened Rachel. She invited Colonel Gaines to speak on Marcus's behalf during the trial's character witness segment. Gaines agreed wholeheartedly, stating he would stand by Marcus, who was a Marine's Marine, deserving of respect, not condemnation. Marcus, still detained, was stunned at the show of solidarity. The black veteran had felt so alone, but now he saw a community rallying for him. For the first time in months, optimism sparkled in his eyes. Chapter 11. The trial begins. The trial commenced on a crisp winter morning. Philadelphia's City Hall, a grand structure of towering columns and statues, became the stage for a drama that would determine Marcus's fate. The courtroom was filled with reporters, veterans, curious onlookers, and the faint smell of dusty legal books. Cameras weren't allowed inside, so news anchors camped outside the doors ready to pounce on any development. Rachel and Marcus sat at the defense table, their meager stack of folders dwarfed by the prosecution's meticulously organized binders. David Rothstein lounged in the gallery, a bandage now removed from his forehead, but replaced by a faint scar. He whispered to his attorney, who occasionally shot smug glances at the defense. Judge Harriet Parker, well respected for her fairness, entered the courtroom. She was in her mid-50s, short-cropped hair, sharp eyes, and a reputation for meticulous rulings. She took her seat, and the bailiff called the court to order. The prosecution delivered its opening statement, painting Marcus as a desperate homeless man, resentful of society, who'd snapped and attacked an unsuspecting businessman. They portrayed David Rothstein as a generous entrepreneur who offered Marcus some money out of pity only to be assaulted. When Rachel took the podium, she spoke of Marcus's service record, his honorable discharge, and the shocking lack of consideration for his side of the story. She told the jury about the missing eyewitness who was never identified or located. She urged them to keep an open mind, for there's more to this story than meets the eye. Then the witness testimonies began. The store manager repeated his damning recollection, claiming Marcus looked like trouble from the start. The responding police officers testified that upon arrival they found a battered David and a visibly angry Marcus. It was all meticulously orchestrated to cast Marcus as the aggressor. Marcus watched in stony silence. He knew that each piece of this puzzle was missing the crucial edge, Alicia's story. Without her, they were fighting on half-truths. Chapter 12. Colonel Gaines takes the stand. Colonel Michael Gaines, dressed in a sharp suit, adorned with a single American flag pin, was the first character witness for the defense. He took the stand, exchanging a respectful nod with Judge Parker. Rachel guided him through his testimony. Colonel, how do you know Marcus Johnson? Gaines folded his hands. I run a non-profit in Philadelphia called Vets for Change. I met Marcus at one of our transitional housing outreach programs. We help veterans reintegrate, find jobs, and deal with PTSD. Marcus attended a few of our meetings. And what was your impression of him? Rachel asked. He was polite, soft-spoken, and always ready to help another vet. He used to share stories about the importance of standing up for the weak. That's something drilled into him as a Marine, yes, but also part of his nature. Gaines paused, glancing at the jury. He told me he ended up homeless because he couldn't keep a job due to night terrors. The man was honest about his struggles. The prosecution objected, dismissing this testimony as irrelevant character fluff. But Judge Parker allowed it, stating it offered insight into Marcus's mindset and conduct. Rachel pressed further. From your professional experience, do you believe Marcus is prone to unprovoked violence? Gaines shook his head emphatically. Absolutely not. In fact, he avoided confrontation at our facility. Once, when two other vets got into an argument, he stepped in calmly. He de-escalated the situation. That's Marcus for you. The colonel's words resonated. The gallery, thick with veterans, nodded in approval. The prosecution cross-examined Gaines, insinuating that not all veterans handle stress well, but it didn't land a decisive blow. Gaines held firm, underscoring that Marcus was no ticking time bomb. By the time he left the stand, the jury was left with a conflicting image. A selfless soldier or a deranged vagrant. The tension in the courtroom was palpable. Chapter 13. Marcus's turn to speak. Despite Rachel's reservations, Marcus insisted on testifying in his own defense. He wanted the jury to hear the truth from his lips. He took a deep breath, stepped forward, and was sworn in. A hush fell over the courtroom. Please state your name and occupation for the record. Rachel began. Marcus Demetrius Johnson. He answered, voice resonating with quiet dignity. I'm currently unemployed, but I was a sergeant in the United States Marine Corps. Marcus, tell us about the night in question. He recounted everything waiting outside the store, seeing the confrontation between David Rothstein and Alicia Perry. The woman's purse scattering on the sidewalk. Her terrified face as David grabbed her. He spoke of the moment he decided to intervene the scuffle and how it ended with David's head hitting the metal dispenser. His voice cracked when he described the police sirens and how no one believed him. Rachel's questions were gentle yet precise, painting a narrative of a Good Samaritan's intervention gone horribly wrong. The courtroom was silent, absorbing every word. Then came the prosecution's cross-examination. The prosecutor, Assistant DA, Cynthia Gregg, strode up with a swagger ready to dismantle Marcus's story. Mr. Johnson, you claimed you saw Alicia Perry's name on a business card, yet you had no time to memorize it. No evidence of it. Marcus tried to remain calm. It was a quick glance. I only saw Alicia's name. And you expect this court to believe a high-profile businesswoman like Alicia Perry would simply vanish, leaving no trace. She flipped through papers. We reached out to Ms. Perry. She denies your entire story. She was nowhere near that store. Are you calling her a liar? Marcus's face tightened. I'm not calling her a liar. Maybe someone pressured her. Or maybe that's not the right Alicia Perry. I don't know. The prosecutor pounced on his uncertainty. So you don't even know if this was Alicia Perry? Could be any random Alicia. Or maybe no one at all. For all we know, you started a fight because you wanted money. Rachel objected. Argumentative. Judge Parker sustained, but the damage was done. The prosecution had sowed seeds of doubt. Chapter 14. A surprising arrival. Just when the defense seemed cornered, fate took a turn. On the second day of trial, as the prosecution began presenting their final witnesses, Rachel received a text from an unknown number. I'm in the courtroom hallway. Need to talk, AP. Heart-pounding, she rushed outside to find a petite woman in a tailored black coat, glancing nervously around. When their eyes met, the woman whispered, I'm Alicia Perry. I heard about the trial and flew back from London. This has gone far enough. Breathless, Rachel ushered her into a conference room. Alicia confirmed everything. She had argued with David that night over dissolving their partnership. He threatened her, pinned her against the wall, and demanded she sign documents handing over her shares. Marcus intervened, saving her from physical harm. Fearing David's retribution, she fled the scene. When she learned about the assault charges, she was terrified David would destroy her business, her reputation, her life. But her conscience wouldn't let her remain silent. Rachel's pulse hammered with exhilaration. Alicia's testimony could change everything. Without wasting time, she motioned a request to the court to add Alicia Perry as a defense witness. The prosecution objected vehemently, claiming it was a last-minute surprise, but Judge Parker allowed it, citing the pursuit of truth. Chapter 15. When the judge hears his name. The next morning, as the trial resumed, Alicia Perry entered the witness stand. David Rothstein blanched, panic flashing across his face. Whispers spread through the gallery. Alicia took a breath. She detailed the argument how David was enraged by her decision to leave the firm. He demanded I sign a buyout on unfair terms, or he'd ruin me. He told me, "You have no idea who you're dealing with." She recounted how she fled the store, tripping, dropping her purse. I was terrified, and then a man stepped in. Marcus. He shielded me, tried to calm David, who lashed out. Marcus defended himself and me. That's what happened. The courtroom was stunned. The prosecutor tried to discredit her, suggesting Alicia was coerced or had an affair with Marcus. Alicia firmly denied it all. She admitted she left the scene out of fear, never expecting Marcus to be arrested. And then it happened. Judge Parker looked down at the notes, paused and repeated Marcus's full name once more. Marcus Demetrius Johnson, in an awed tone. She removed her reading glasses, a flicker of recognition in her eyes. The courtroom grew still. She addressed Alicia gently. "And you are certain that it was this man, Mr. Johnson, who intervened on your behalf?" "Yes, Your Honor." "I'm certain." The judge turned her gaze to Marcus. "Mr. Johnson, may I ask, were you stationed in Ramadi in 2004? Marcus blinked in surprise. "Yes, Your Honor." She exhaled, voice trembling slightly with memory. "My nephew served there. Private First Class Andrew Parker. He was severely wounded in an IED attack, and the Marine who pulled him out of that flaming vehicle, his name was Sergeant Marcus Johnson." A gasp coursed through the gallery. Marcus stared at the judge in disbelief. Memories of dusty roads and a flaming Humvee rushed back the adrenaline-charged moment he saw a wounded Private Parker pinned beneath scorched metal. He had risked his life to save him, ignoring the hail of gunfire overhead. The name Andrew Parker had never left him. He'd always wondered what became of the young private. Judge Parker's voice broke momentarily. He told me about the Marine who saved his life. The name was etched in our family's prayers ever since. She gathered herself, returning to her judicial composure, though tears glistened. "Bailiff, instruct the courtroom." The bailiff barked, "All rise." In a profound moment, the entire courtroom stood. The judge rose from her seat, her eyes meeting Marcus's. "Mr. Johnson, I believe the entire court owes you not just respect but gratitude." Murals of stunned admiration painted the faces of spectators. Even the hard-bitten prosecutor seemed rattled. David Rothstein shrank in his seat, sweat beading on his forehead. Cameras flashed from the corridor windows, where press craned to see the commotion. This was the moment that changed everything. Chapter 16. Truth Prevails. With Alicia Perry's testimony, the defense's case turned from shaky to powerful. She confirmed that David had lied under oath, combined with the knowledge that Marcus was indeed the hero who had once saved the judge's nephew. The jury's perspective shifted dramatically. The prosecution scrambled to salvage credibility, but their star witness, David Rothstein, was now thoroughly discredited. Under cross-examination, Rachel unearthed more of his violent past. She presented records of hush-money settlements, allegations of intimidation, even the suspicious phone call from that night, indicating a terrified woman had run from him. With each revelation, David's composure cracked. He fumbled through contradictory explanations. The store manager's bias also emerged when Rachel showed prior complaints from homeless patrons who'd been harassed or banned from the store, indicating a pattern of prejudice. In short, the prosecution's case collapsed. As the trial approached its conclusion, the once one-sided narrative had flipped. The final defense statement reminded the jury Marcus Johnson served his country with honor. On a rainy night, he stepped up again to protect a citizen in distress, only to be betrayed by false accusations. If we cannot see the heroism in this man, we fail the values we claim to uphold. The jury deliberated for just 3 hours before returning with a verdict, not guilty on all counts. A spontaneous cheer erupted from the veteran community in the gallery. Judge Parker maintained order, but her eyes shone with approval. She addressed Marcus directly. "Justice is served. Thank you for your service, Sergeant Johnson." Outside, the cameras whirred, capturing the moment of exoneration. Marcus blinked against the bright sunshine and swirling snow flurries, stepping out of the courthouse as a free man. Reporters peppered him with questions, hungry for a headline. He shielded his eyes, scanning the crowd for Rachel. When he spotted her, he pulled his attorney into a heartfelt embrace. "I can't ever repay you, Rachel." She laughed, tears of relief in her eyes. "Just live your life. That's payment enough." Meanwhile, David Rothstein slinked out a side entrance, face pale as he dodged a barrage of cameras. Karma's weight was about to crash down on him. Chapter 17. Hard Karma hits back. In the weeks following the trial, David Rothstein found himself under investigation for perjury and multiple fraud allegations. Alicia Perry filed a lawsuit against him for harassment and intimidation, seeking damages that threatened to bankrupt him. Linda Harrison, his former fiancée, finally felt safe enough to come forward and speak to the press about the abuse she suffered. One by one, David's powerful connections distanced themselves. Rumors circulated about potential indictments for financial crimes. The local newspapers ran scathing editorials about how influential bullies manipulate the system, calling for reforms to protect vulnerable defendants like Marcus. It turned out David's father, once a respected judge, had no interest in shielding a son who lied in court and tormented others. The father publicly denounced him, stating, "No one is above the law." Sponsors pulled out of David's business deals, clients fled, and he faced the humiliating reality of possible jail time. Chapter 18. A New Dawn. Meanwhile, the city's veteran community embraced Marcus as a symbol of perseverance. Colonel Gaines offered him a job with Vets for Change, coordinating outreach programs to help homeless vets. Another local non-profit helped secure an apartment for him. The nightmares from Iraq still lingered, but now he had a support system, group therapy sessions, job coaching, and a safe place to sleep. When local news stations invited him for interviews, he politely declined, preferring to keep his life private. Instead, he gave one exclusive interview to highlight the importance of mental health services for veterans, urging the city to expand its support. The interview went viral, sparking a wave of donations to non-profits serving homeless veterans. Judge Parker arranged a personal meeting with Marcus and her nephew Andrew Parker. The two men embraced, tears in their eyes, sharing memories of that night in Ramadi. Andrew thanked Marcus again for his life. They talked for hours about survival loss and second chances. Over the next few months, Marcus threw himself into outreach work. He spoke one-on-one with vets, still on the streets, offering empathy and guidance. He used his own story to show them that hope wasn't a fairy tale. With Colonel Gaines's guidance, he managed to enroll in community college. He aspired to become a social worker, determined to help others who shared his struggles. Chapter 19. The entire courtroom. Rises news of the verdict, and Judge Parker's emotional recognition of Marcus's heroism spread far and wide. People were touched by the moment the entire courtroom had stood in honor of his name, a symbolic gesture that underscored the respect owed to those who risk their lives for others. Local politicians seized on the story to launch new policies, proposing better mental health funding for veterans. The City Council called for an overhaul of public defense resources, highlighting Marcus's ordeal as an example of how easily a hero could be mislabeled a criminal. Veterans from all walks of life began writing letters to the editor, praising the judge's compassion. The phrase, "when the judge hears his name," the entire courtroom rises, became a viral tagline for philanthropic campaigns supporting veterans. People from across the nation sent donations, letters of support, and offers of help. For Marcus, it was surreal. He never sought fame or recognition. He just wanted a fair shot at life to rise above the burdens of war and homelessness. Yet the image of him saluting the judge, who once again thanked him for saving her nephew, burned itself into Philadelphia's collective consciousness. Chapter 20. The Path Forward. In the months that followed, Alicia Perry won her lawsuit against David Rothstein, receiving a substantial settlement. She used part of the money to start a foundation aimed at helping women escape abusive professional relationships. She personally credited Marcus for inspiring her to stand up against injustice. Their paths crossed occasionally at philanthropic events, each time exchanging a warm hug and a reminder of that rainy night. Rachel McBride's career soared. Her defense of Marcus garnered attention from reputable law firms and non-profits. She ultimately accepted a position at the Philadelphia Innocence Project, where she continued to champion the wrongfully accused. She cited Marcus's case as the turning point in her own belief that every person deserved unwavering advocacy. For Marcus, life was still challenging, but illuminated by hope. The shadows of war didn't vanish overnight. He still had panic attacks, still flinched at sudden noises. But with therapy and a newfound sense of purpose, he learned to cope better. His nights were no longer spent under an overpass, but in a modest apartment where the walls displayed pictures of his Marine unit, as well as letters of thanks from veterans he'd helped. Some weekends, he volunteered at the local VA hospital reading to bedridden vets or simply offering a listening ear. Many recognized him from the news, calling him a hero. He would blush, shrugging off praise. "I'm just doing my duty," he'd say. Chapter 21. A Final Honor. Months after the trial, the city of Philadelphia organized a ceremony honoring veterans who had shown extraordinary bravery, both in service and at home. Mayor Jim Kenney made a speech about the importance of recognizing those who continue to serve their community after returning from battle. Marcus was among the honorees. Dressed in a clean suit provided by a local charity, Marcus took the stage amidst applause. There, Judge Harriet Parker presented him with a special commendation, referencing not just his heroic act overseas, but his unwavering moral compass that led him to save Alicia Perry. The audience rose to their feet, clapping and cheering. Tears welled in Marcus's eyes as he acknowledged the ovation. The judge leaned in and whispered, "You saved my nephew's life. You reminded me why justice must always seek the truth." In that instant, the memory of those bleak nights on the streets seemed a lifetime away. Here he was, validated, and seen not as a forgotten homeless veteran, but as the man he truly was, a Marine who never abandoned his oath to protect. Chapter 22. A New Mission. Following the ceremony, Marcus and Colonel Gaines walked along the Delaware River waterfront, the city lights twinkling against the water. Gaines handed Marcus a folded piece of paper. "It's the contact for a program that can help you pay for college if you want to become a licensed social worker. I think you'd be great at it." Marcus clutched the paper. "Thank you, sir. I do want to help others like me. People who feel invisible." Gaines patted his shoulder. "You're not invisible anymore, Marcus. You're a testament to what it means to rise above adversity." They stared at the reflection of the moon dancing on the ripples. Marcus inhaled the chilly night air, feeling a profound sense of gratitude. He'd survived war zones, homelessness, a wrongful trial, and emerged with a clearer sense of purpose. He would continue to serve not in uniform, but in the streets and community centers, extending a lifeline to others who felt forgotten. He vowed to ensure that no veteran in Philadelphia, especially those who were homeless or struggling with PTSD, would feel alone and abandoned. Chapter 23. Peace. Found life rarely wraps up neatly, but for Marcus, the pieces slowly fell into place. He started classes at a local community college. It was strange being around younger students, but he relished every assignment, every lecture about psychology and social welfare. He volunteered at a winter shelter, recognized by many from the news story, but always humble in his approach. Occasionally, Judge Parker invited him to speak at legal seminars, highlighting the importance of second chances and thorough investigations. Sometimes Andrew Parker joined them, telling the story of how Marcus saved him in Ramadi. The synergy of those testimonies moved audiences, reminding them that behind every homeless vet is a tapestry of courage and sacrifice. Marcus also reconnected with distant relatives in South Philadelphia. His cousin, who'd once teased him about joining the Marines, expressed admiration. Family gatherings, once uncomfortable, grew warmer. He found that bridging the gap between his past and present was possible when done with honesty and openness. Chapter 24. The Ripple Effect. A year after the trial, statistics showed a marked increase in resources allocated to homeless veterans in Philadelphia. Inspired by Marcus's story, local businesses teamed up with non-profits to offer job training and transitional housing. Rachel McBride leveraged the media attention to advocate for legislation that mandated better PTSD evaluations for arrested veterans. Even the convenience store where the incident occurred underwent new management. The previous manager was let go after investigations into discriminatory practices. A sign in the window now read, "Veterans Welcome." Ironically, the store saw a surge in community goodwill. David Rothstein's downfall was swift. Multiple lawsuits crippled his finances. He faced criminal charges for perjury and fraud. With no powerful allies left, he pleaded guilty to certain counts, receiving a prison sentence. The once cocky businessman who manipulated the system would be living behind bars, a stark lesson in how lies eventually unravel. Chapter 25. Full Circle. On a mild spring afternoon, Marcus visited the Veterans Memorial at Penn's Landing. A gentle breeze carried the scent of blooming flowers. He stood before the names etched in stone, searching for old friends he lost overseas. He whispered thanks to them, promising he would live a life worthy of their sacrifice. He pulled out a small notebook, the same one he used in jail, and scribbled a final entry. Never forget the mission. To serve, protect, and uplift. Closing it, he reflected on the trial, on the moment the judge recognized his name, on the entire courtroom rising. That memory felt surreal, yet it was a reminder that goodness can triumph, that fate has a way of rewarding genuine moral courage. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery oranges and purples. Marcus tucked the notebook into his jacket, heading off to share dinner with fellow vets from the shelter. He smiled, thinking of his future. For the first time in years, he felt at peace. He would go on tirelessly to honor the uniform he once wore, forging a legacy of compassion. And each time someone asked about that day in court, he would recount it not with pride, but with humility. Because in his heart, he believed that every time we stand up for what's right, the entire universe rises with us. Conclusion. 150 words. CTA. Thank you for traveling this intense journey of resilience, truth, and justice. Marcus Johnson's story is more than a courtroom drama. It's a testament to the unseen battles many veterans face long after their service ends. With the right help, a single act of courage can spark transformation in entire communities. If this story moved, you don't let it end here. Share it with a friend who might need hope, like it to show your support for the heroes among us, and subscribe for more stories that shine a light on the trials and triumphs of ordinary people rising above extraordinary odds. By standing together, we honor those who have sacrificed so much. Let's continue, turning struggles into strength, adversity into advocacy, and doubt into determination. Because sometimes all it takes is one voice, one person to bring an entire courtroom and an entire world to its feet.